I want to use this video to highlight even cultures that don't mutilate the genitals of their children have this ubiquitous taboo and this lack of knowledge of the male genital anatomy. In fact, there's a worldwide taboo on learning and knowledge of the anatomy of the male genitalia. In fact, the doctors do not even learn the anatomy, structure, and function of the prepuce in their anatomy, structure, and function classes. And I know because I took their classes, anatomy, structure, and function 101 and 102 for health professionals in college. So I know exactly what they get in their courses because I took their courses. And I didn't learn anything about the anatomy, structure, and function of the male prepuce in anatomy 101 and 102 for health professionals. This is pre-med courses that you have to have done before you can apply to medical school. So not even people with the body part. In fact, I did an Uber drive with a heart doctor from England who never even knew the anatomy, structure, and function of his own body parts. So I'm going to use this video just to highlight that. Although this is a fantastic video and I don't want to take away from the intentions of the speaker, of the video maker.
What is the current medical thinking on circumcision, on male circumcision?
Circumcision is totally not required and nothing more than a barbaric act, getting rid of something that doesn't need to be got rid of at all.
To circumcise a man, does it affect him sexually?
It certainly does. Lots of women have said that men who have had circumcisions, the glans, penis, which in colloquial terms is the head of the penis, that skin becomes a lot harder because it's not protected by this hood of skin.
The interesting part is the only structure, like a function that we've been told that the AAP and these other quack organizations will even admit as a function of the prepuce is protection. So that's all we go to, even people with the body part. She's talking about the glands or protecting the glands from becoming keratinized and developing a tougher outer layer because it's supposed to be a mucosal surface.
And this means that this hardened skin is less sensitive and therefore the man takes longer to climax.
Now here's where this gets interesting. The brain would say, hey, if I remove the sensory input and I reduce the sexual pleasure, then that would cause the ejaculation to be delayed. This is really actually not the case. And this is the interesting part here, is that most people think that the glands is the most pleasurable part or the sensitive part. And in fact, it is not the glands, it's the frenulum, the frenular delta, and the ridge band, as you can see on this graphic. The red parts show the highly sensitive parts. These parts were studied by Dr. Sorrells. This was also validated, as you can see here, by the histology research of Drs. Taylor, Cold, and Lockwood, where they took a microscope and they actually pointed at the tissue and found an abundance of Meissner corpuscles. You see those little kind of like almost grape-looking circular objects? Those are Meissner corpuscles in the ridge band, the most pleasurable, sensitive nerves of our body. This is what makes touching and kissing feels good. You have an abundance of Meissner corpuscles in your fingertips and your lips. So the most pleasurable part of the male genitalia is the frenulum and the ridge band. The glans is the least sensitive to fine touch. Now, it does produce pleasurable sensations. Obviously, a man with one knows this. But here's the deal. The glans is full of nociceptors and free nerve endings. These are pain receptors. They have a higher threshold of stimulation, so they don't stimulate very early or easily like the lower threshold Meissner corpuscles. Okay, they stimulate at a higher threshold. Now, when you remove the prepuce acts as a rolling, gliding structure, which reduces friction of intermission or one object moving inside another by tenfold. So when you reduce friction of intermission, you reduce the friction of the glands on the glands. Okay, so you have less friction on the glands as the prepuce rolls and glides across during intercourse. So the glands is the least sensitive part, but if you circumcise the male, now the glands is exposed 100% of the time. Then the nociceptors have more friction and they fire, creating premature ejaculation. This is the cause of the American Pie videos, okay? Guess what? American kids, right? This is the problem with circumcision. This actually creates a hair trigger glands, which causes an increase in premature ejaculation, an increase of overfiring of those nerves, and causes it to be much more difficult for a circumcised man to delay his ejaculation. Think about it this way. Intact men have more nerve endings, right? They have more feeling, more input coming in. If you have more nerves, you have more control, not less. I've heard intact men say it's like riding the wave to orgasm, where they can pull the strings one direction or the other, either way, whether they, hey, it's time, or hey, let's pull back a little bit, she's not ready yet, kind of thing. So yeah, having more control means more ability. More nerves means more ability to control. It means more brains. Circumcised men like myself, we have a hair trigger. The nociceptors, as I just mentioned, they have a higher threshold. They also have a higher frequency of nerve feeling that's sent to the brain. So circumcised men like myself, if you hit that wave and you go over the top, you're gone. You can't control it. It's a rapid increase and a set fire, and you're gone too late. As a circumcised man, I've experienced this. And from what I understand and from the anatomy I've studied, this is very different from what intact men experience. They have more control, not less. So circumcised men have far higher rates of premature ejaculation. They will most often come sooner. Now, every man, as we're, in our adolescence, we're not used to it. It takes a little bit of time to get accustomed to it. So every man has to learn how to control it. It's kind of like learning how to drive a Ferrari as opposed to a Pinto. It may take you a little bit longer to learn how to drive a Ferrari than a Pinto, but your Ferrari is going to produce a lot more performance than your Pinto. So learning how to control your Ferrari, I would rather have kept my Ferrari, because I'm intelligent, I'm not an idiot, and I'm not a coward, and I'm not living in denial of the anatomical facts of my body that I'm lacking and missing.
Penises. Not having experienced circumcised penises, I guess I can't really make an educated comment.
You know who can make an educated comment? Is American women who travel on their European vacation. That's who can make an educated guess. And this is why you hear women rave about the sensualness, the sweetness, the something different about their Latin or European lovers that just drive them crazy. You know what that is? They have all their body parts. They have the most pleasurable, sensitive, functional part of their body parts. This is a tissue that rolls and glides. It has a function. It has, it's amazing. It's very complex. When the skin unrolls and unravels and everts, it stretches and expands and exposes the sensitive inner tissue. The prepuce everts during erection, becoming the main interfacing tissue that both gives and receives pleasure. It's the main part. It is the MVP. It is the most valuable, pleasurable part of our bodies, and this is why they're cutting it off as a sacrifice, and this is why they're using it as childhood trauma to create docile slaves that are aggressive and insecure. That's basically what this is about. And we have an entire world that lives in denial of the anatomy, structure, and function of the male body parts, because if we were to wrap our brains around this, if we were to accept this, then the Europeans would be to blame, because they said nothing while America has mutilated babies for over 60 years. And they dropped it in Britain. They dropped it in New Zealand, thanks to the research of Dr. Garnier, who did research in the 50s and said it was a bunch of bullshit. That's what stopped circumcision in Britain. So, anyways, we have a worldwide taboo on the anatomy, structure, and function of the male genitalia. We have doctors that deny that Meissner corpuscles create sensations. I literally have a 4-part video series that I just did. I call it the documentary on the doctor who can't even accept the facts of the histology studies of Taylor, Colden, Lockwood, and the neurology testing of Dr. Sorrells. This is a very sad state of affairs. But when you accept the anatomy, when you acknowledge that this is a very innervated, when that means innervated means nerve dense, it has a lot of nerves, that tissue is very sensitive, it's very important, it has a function. When we acknowledge that, we have to acknowledge that we are damaging children's brain development. We have to acknowledge that we are sexually crippling our children, that we are assaulting babies, that we are a genital mutilation culture. That's why nobody wants to watch these videos. That's why nobody wants to hear this. That's why I'm not popular on social media, because nobody wants to hear the truth. And nobody wants to hear a pissed off man who's educated. Nobody wants to hear that, do they? Well, we're coming.